Good evening. It's 6 o'clock. I'd like to call to order the August 1st committee meeting of the Milton Area School District. We have roll call, please.
Mr. Frederick.
Here. Do the pledge first.
Mr. Hosterman.
Here.
Mr. Hunt.
Here.
Ms. Kessler.
Is not able to make the evening.
Mr. Moser.
Not heard from him. I'm supposed to be, not sure, supposed to be coming.
Okay. Dr. Strasser.
Here.
Mr. Harris. Dr. Weaver.
Here.
Mrs. Rance.
Here. I apologize. Could we all please stand and join together with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin the evening with comments from visitors. We do have a gentleman, Mr. Vaughn Murray from West Chillisquaque Township. He would like to address elementary realignment, transportation concerns, and impact on students from West Chillisquaque Township.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity. I think you all, most of you know who I am. Chris introduced me. If you recall, back in May, I sent a letter to Dr. Pickhart that was copied to the Region 2 reps, and I believe he shared it with all reps, that expressed some of the concerns that the township supervisors and our residents have about the potential realignment. We understand why you're looking at it. And in the letter, I explained that we are concerned primarily with the impact on education from long bus rides. We had several parents that say that some of their fifth graders now have almost 90 minutes one way. And Dr. Pickhart said I should come to the meeting tonight. I know you're not going to do a whole lot with it tonight, and there will be future public meetings. And I have encouraged any of our residents with concerns to be here. And as of now, I'm representing them. So just to stress what was in the letter, that we're concerned. We know you're looking at all the pros and cons of this, but we want to stress our concern about the possibility of long bus rides and the impact that has. You know, our kids already have longer rides with the closing of the school. And now if they have longer rides and combined with elementary through high school, some of the parents were concerned about the issue with how some of the older children act as childish as opposed to the younger ones and the impact it has. And I know it's out of bus drivers' hands to really control some of that. So that was a concern that was raised to us. So just ask that you keep that in mind as you're looking at this, what the impact has on that. There's impact on parents who don't feel secure in letting their children ride the bus. So then they're stuck, okay, if they have a third grader and a fifth grader, they now have to go to Bacher and line up in that debacle and then run the white deer back and forth. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. We appreciate you stopping in tonight. And I believe the next presentation may answer some of your questions. All right.
So as we move forward in this discussion, one of the things we wanted to look at was where transportation was last year, where it stands today. Mr. Toll is here, and he will take a little bit of time to focus generally on where we are today and what is being done for 23-24 transportation. So I'll turn it over to Darren.
Alrighty, so I'm just going to start with a little overview transportation wise. So in the morning, we operate 15 buses. In the afternoon, we'll be looking at operating 16. We have 2 wheelchair accessible buses that run both in the morning and afternoon. We have 1 bus that transports non-public students, and around 28 vans, just depends on the need. That can fluctuate. District spans 85 square miles, 2 counties. In the morning, we do transport elementary and secondary students together. Then the afternoon, they are separated with the elementary being taken home. Then they swing back around and do a route for the high school and middle school. Some fifth graders do transfer to secondary runs from White Deer. The route times are similar to other districts in our area. I reached out to other transportation coordinators. They have the benchmark of no student on the bus longer than 1 hour, but they do have many routes that go over, typically like 3 or 4. Lewisburg was the only one that didn't, but their coordinator said their district's so small, it's not an issue for them. So, and our contractors, Fishing Creek, which you guys have all met and spoken with. So for 23-24, my goals based on the feedback that I received, make every effort to keep elementary student ride time less than 1 hour, improve transportation situation for the 5th grade students at White Deer, and evaluate the high impact areas of Montandon and Pottsgrove, which were on the bus longer than an hour, a lot of those 5th grade students. So did for the upcoming year create a new afternoon run that would go from White Deer, mostly serving 5th grade students in the Montandon area and the eastern side of our district. So that has been added. Those students have been moved over. And I also made slight adjustments to existing routes to try and move some stops over to different routes that they might fit in better, or rearrange the order to make sure those 5th graders get home sooner. So the process I followed was I had to assign all 5th grade students to transportation because that all changed with them moving. The previous year's 5th graders, which are now 6th graders, all had to be assigned to new routes, and then the kindergartners who were coming in. Then we sent out an email requesting parent changes. So between those and new enrollments, we had well over 100 requests, so all those were changed. Then I took a look at the afternoon routes from the middle school and high school, where the 5th grade students were riding longer than an hour. So I pulled every stop, had a cutoff on the route where it would put them over an hour, looked at all those 5th graders. I mapped those points out and then created a route based on that is an hour long, trying to maximize the ridership. And then I adjusted the routes for those students who could not fit into that new route. There were a couple that were just, they're outlying. It's really tough to make that arrangement with anything that makes sense. But for the projections, in the morning, we have 3 elementary students riding longer than 1 hour, a 1st grader for 1 minute, a 2nd grader for 3 minutes over, and a 4th grader that is 5 minutes over. Last year, we did have 1 student, but with kindergarten students coming in, adding stops, just kind of pushed those routes a little bit longer. For the afternoon, we have 9 elementary students riding longer than 1 hour. This is down from 21 students last year, 57% decrease. 3 of them are for 3 minutes. 4, we have a 1st grader for 1 minute, another 1st grader for 2 minutes over, 3rd and 4th grader for 3 minutes. And then there are 2 5th graders that I could not get, and it's 18 minutes and 7 minutes over. So the new bus run keeps 28 5th graders from being on the bus longer than an hour. Other adjustments were made, as I said, to get other 5th graders home earlier. And these times are all assuming that every student rides the bus that's assigned to it. The bus has to stop at every stop and with average conditions. So throughout the year, ridership changes. Parents decide they're going to drive their kids. The route goes faster. There are some days where it just happens that the bus is full and it's going to be a little bit longer. So just the projections are based on that. But those students in the morning, once we find out that 4 of the stops the kids aren't really riding, then they might not be on, or if everyone rides, then they are going to be on longer than an hour. So just looking at costs and estimates for this change, the estimated annual cost for this added bus is $42,048. It's covering a longer route, a long distance, and only filled at 50% capacity. So it keeps 28 5th graders from riding longer than an hour. The average time for those students, if they were assigned to transportation as we did it last year, would be 13 minutes, with the minimum being 1 minute over and the max was 53 minutes over. So we addressed that, those extra long rides. There's a graph there that just shows the number of students within those time ranges. And I'll always continue to evaluate routes throughout the year if I'm getting feedback from parents, as we did last year, that something's not working. At the first couple weeks, it's always a little wacky. Everyone's getting used to the new schedule. And, after those weeks, we can kind of see what it's really going to be like. And we're always willing to adjust where it's needed, to help out those students. The length or time of other routes were not reduced or increased in a way that reduces efficiency or increases the costs when I was changing things around. So for looking at 24-25, just how I'm going to plan for that and look at it now that most of everything is set up for the new school year. I'm going to use the student population of this school year to project out what it might look like for a potential realignment. I'm going to use the routes we currently use as a guide to see the areas that we're going to be serving and need to transport in, and kind of go from there on how we might want to change things to make it more efficient and to keep the students. We're going to be switching schools on the bus for under an hour. So the morning routes give us a really solid structure. 6 of the 15 morning buses already stop at all 3 buildings. And we utilize transfers really successfully from Bacher. So I know that hasn't been an issue last year. Going to evaluate routes that are grouped together to ensure that they're optimized, ones that run along the same paths in the same areas, to make sure they're stopping in ways that makes the most sense and can take any amount of time off those routes that we can. The routing software we have has tools that help in that. You can run scenarios based on routes to merge them together and see what that looks like or to optimize. So certainly use everything we have available to us. Obviously, we'll review the plan we have with Fishing Creek, use their years of experience and expertise to help us make the best decision and to see what's practical and what can actually work. And then another option we have is to submit our new plan to Route Finder, which is the routing software we use. They have a team. You can pay a fee. They'll evaluate it and make sure, hey, yeah, this is the best you can do it. Or, hey, no, you can do these things to make it a little bit better. There is a cost to that. It's an hourly consulting fee. And they said it would probably take 4 hours for a team to just go through everything we have. And some things to consider. Moving forward, elementary student ridership less than an hour, as we've said. Maximize capacity and reduce the empty miles. We don't want empty buses driving around, and we want to make sure the buses are filled to maximize the subsidy. And ridership changes and changes in population density. So this year, just even 5th graders, when looking at the routes, you can see a ton of empty stops, where this last year, a lot of 5th graders lived in that area. Now, a lot of them we had in town was a higher density. Now this year, it seems to be more outlying. Those things change, people move. So that's something that have to be considered with the realignment. That's going to be a thing each year, just evaluating it, making sure we're looking at the routes each year to make sure that we're doing what's best for the students. That's all I have. And if you have any questions, be happy to.
Fishing Creek, we have anything to add?
Anything from Fishing Creek? Do you want to add anything?
No, discussions with Aaron over the past several months have led to this. Aaron for a nice presentation on it. And looking forward to a safe and effective school year going forward. And I think this plan will be effective in minimizing the impact of students being on the bus rate.
I think, good.
So we're looking at an increase of 42,000 roughly. Realistically, how much of that do we get back in reimbursement?
So right now we get reimbursed at a clip of about like 48% of our transportation subsidy. We would not get reimbursed at that amount though for that route, because that bus is going to be running with about half capacity and have a lot of empty miles. So when we look at that, we will not get we won't get reimbursed at the same rate, because it's a less efficient bus, because we're looking to just add those additional kids to cut the time down. We strive for filled buses because we get reimbursed based on the number of pupils who are riding without empty miles. So I would estimate that we're going to get reimbursed at like 20% of that bus's amount. So it's something to consider, like, as we look at ways to cut down the time, it's gonna come at a cost. Like and I've said it before, there's ways to do it without cost. That would be reducing number of stops, making longer walking distance to the stops, things like that. But that's not always, like, you're gonna have unhappy people on either side. So just something for the board to consider as we look at the realignment.
I think we had great feedback, our meetings that were held. The middle school was, feedback from folks like Mr. Murray. I think it's a small investment. Sure that our kids are not on buses forever. So are there additional questions after the presentation, Mr. Murray? Do you feel like some of your concerns were covered?
Yeah, I think you're definitely, the district's moving in the right way. Of course, if you start to make bigger changes with 4th and 5th graders, there's a whole new reevaluation that keep this gentleman very busy working on that. So that's really our biggest concern. But it was great that, and I'll turn it back to the supervisors and our residents, that there are plans that will reduce at least that 5th grader time. And I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I think our priority was, and I credit Darren for that. We got to live in the here and now, right? We need to address the situation that is occurring. We also had an honest conversation this week of, when we come back to the table in October with the information regarding what realignment looks like, facts may show, okay, we still need that extra bus next year. We need another bus to do it the way we want to. We have to look at the cost analysis versus what savings can come from, realignment or not. So a lot of conversations still to be had. I think process-wise for the board, you have the information for now. We're going to get the school year started. We'll be here on September 12th and the 19th. I'm sure if there is any major issues still occurring in the current, we'll deal with that then. Intention is in October, when we are beginning to move towards making a decision on realignment, that at that committee meeting, Darren's going to be prepared to give you the best scenario, best options possible at that time, based on what he just showed you, regarding what we think it would look like in a realigned status. Any other questions about transportation?
So do we need to approve these changes? This proposed change for this coming year?
I don't think so.
No, it's just updated routing and things for us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Darren, appreciate it.
Okay, we'll begin executive committee discussion with a school solicitor discussion.
So we've begun the process. I've asked Eric to be a lead on this. For our policy, it does state between Derek and I that process runs through us. So I'm going to allow Derek to just give you a quick overview of exactly where we are with the request for proposals.
Sure. So as everyone knows, we sent out the request for proposals. So at the end of that, we did receive 3 proposals, which we opened up publicly here at the district office. The first that we received was from the law offices of Angela Evans, the second from Beard Legal, and the third from McCormick Law. All 3 of them provided everything that was required per the RFP. So they're all acceptable proposals. Once we received them, I created a rubric to help us score each prospective law firm. So what we did was then I shared that rubric with Dr. Kirkpatrick, Mrs. Gurton, and Mrs. Harris. So each of us would individually score the proposals as received. So the RFP specifically states that our scoring is based on the proposals received. So we went through and looked at the actual documents, what was provided, what was submitted by those firms. That's still in process. It's not finalized yet. We are making reference calls to check on each of the firms to get feedback from current clients, people who work with them. So I know tomorrow we're going to meet and I think try to wrap up like our determination based on the rubrics and the referral checks or the reference checks. And then the goal will be to have, which firm we think is the highest scoring overall to be presented to the board for approval next week. And hopefully have a solicitor in position. I think the RFP I put August 15th for them to assume that role. So that's kind of where the process is right now. Any questions on that? Any additional information I can provide?
Do we as a board get to see the proposals?
I don't see why not.
So I have the proposals here. I would assume they're public. Yeah, they're open publicly. All 3 are here.
are we asked to evaluate them at all? I mean, it is
Uh,
the solicitor on behalf of us.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I know typically just from my understanding is that usually it's the superintendent or the business administrator that makes a recommendation based on the proposal itself. Because you're probably aware it's a large document to review and cover, but I mean, I have no problem with the board reviewing the proposals. I mean, it's just going to make you more informed. And regardless of the recommendation we make, it is still the choice of the board for who you want to go with. So I would assume that we would speak to the board prior to a vote anyway, based
Correct.
on why.
That would be the
recommending,
intention.
Like why we're
Prior.
choosing who we are for recommendation. So
But the documents I mean, we open them publicly. I have them here. They're free. I think if you're at any point want to come in and review them, we'll have them available. That was a discussion just for public. We had that discussion of the process states, this is how it should be followed. That's why I said, I've asked Derek to kind of lead this aspect of it, but you're more than welcome to come review them. We will have a discussion prior to any vote next week to answer any questions based on our recommendation.
they're all available at the district office. In fact, I believe we have copies of.
Yeah, I have them right here, but they're
I
all.
just wanted to make sure, yeah, I was gonna say if we have them, and if not, I would have a copy at the business office as well. So if anybody wants to reach out, they can just reach out to me.
Right. Next, agenda items. I'm looking forward to presentations from the athletic boosters, band boosters, and stage next week. So there's nothing else. Any questions that you have? That's all I have. Facilities Committee, Mr. Hosterman.
Sure. I think we're gonna invite Damian Sparrow for an update on Bacher. Welcome back, Damian.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you. Wayne and I are going to hand out some information for tonight. I will talk loudly while we get ourselves ready. What you're going to see in front of you tonight are two important things. One is the update on pricing for the Bacher project. The good news is it's unchanged from our last time that we were together. And there are places where we're looking to try and reduce some costs. And the second thing is the outline for everything related to the.
Yes.
So what you have in front of you is the table that you're probably all familiar with from the times that we've been speaking before. And those tables indicate construction costs at the top, followed by some other construction items that we have. When you get to the second group, you will see some A's and some P's. A's are actual, P's are projected. And what I'd like to bring your attention to is the first three projected numbers that you see here are related to the site work, canopy, and the playground. Site work, canopy will be things that we talk about tonight because pending your review this evening of the concepts that we're presenting, and Mr. Adam Kerr from EI Associates, who is our architect that's designing that canopy, I'm going to invite him in a moment to go through it. And if it meets with your approval, we will, within about a month or so, coordinate with Derek's office, and we will issue an advertisement out for bid for that. So in the fall, we'll be in front of the board and be able to have the opportunity to award that work so that it gets completed next summer. So I'll draw your attention to the fact that we got a $500,000 allowance in for the canopy itself. We had some other site work that goes with it. The total there is $584,000. So $585,000. And when we get to the back page of all this, we'll be comparing that to the budget and the estimates we have for the two canopy options. Those budgets for the two options are right on either side of that total budget number. If we can get the full option for the biggest canopy for the budget we want, we'll take that. If not, we have a slightly lesser option. The other large number is for the playground. We are still carrying $500,000 for playground equipment. I know that the administration has been talking to vendors work on getting what we need, but at a lesser value than carrying in the budget. There are some other items down below that we still have as projections, but we're keeping the project where we wanted to, so we can get through the canopy and the playground and really see how we can bring all this back to the. That's our budget and estimate cost to date update. Before I get into the schedule at Bacher, which will be very brief, does anybody have any questions about this document? We'll tell you, I would like to thank a whole lot of people in this room because there are lots of folks that have been helping us through the summer, get started on BPOD early, work through getting some approvals from the state related to special education reviews of rooms. Probably way too much for me to get into to thank Mr. Hoffman in particular, but we've had a lot of wonderful collaboration from everybody at the district. We are in great shape to have the APOD ready to go. I want to know, Mr. Slater, are you feeling good about what you're seeing now?
Feel very confident in that today. Talk about today.
Great, thank you. And thanks for everything you've been doing to help us. With BPOD, we're looking to, and we're going to set a date, and probably right after we get everybody into APOD, we're going to have a meeting to shore up some of where we move. We're looking to get BPOD finished in October so that we can just continue to work through and see what else we can do during the school year, leaving the bulk of the work that is in the core spaces till next summer. Also next summer will be the installation of this canopy that we're about to talk about now. So these schedules that we talked about, wow, it feels like we've been talking about them for a year now. We're following those schedules and things are working out well. What we're getting out of our contractors, subcontractors, vendors has also been extraordinary. So please, all the way around. Any questions about that before I introduce Mr. Kerr to talk about the canopy a bit? Okay.
The other, before we jump into the canopy, just for the board knowledge, we have met Playworld sits, or I'm sorry, Playground sits there as a P, projected cost. We met, we have design option. We intend on September 12th at the committee meeting to have Playworld here to show you what they're thinking, what it looks like, what we have to do to remove other equipment, to go through that whole process of what that would look like. So you're clearly educated on where we are. There is, without a doubt, a time frame to that, simply because just like everything, there's a lot of time it takes to get materials in for playgrounds. So just know canopy discussion now, moving into playground discussion in September.
Please, I hope Ms. Kessler gets a copy of this because I know this was important to her. So I'd like to introduce Adam Kerr. He's going to talk to you about PI Associates and their design for the canopy, and then we'll answer some questions on that. I will finish up with budget and how we're going to work through getting into procurement and getting into the building.
Good evening. Thanks for having me here. Appreciate the opportunity. We've come up with some 3D images and some plans, and I wanted to chat a little bit about the design and some of the rationale behind it. So hopefully you have some 3D images. I think there's a couple first in the packet, and then 2 floor plan options, I should say floor plan, but canopy plan options that we can walk through. I'll first start off by saying that, what we recommended is a multiple height canopy. So as you can see, the outer edge around the drop off loop is higher. Of course, for buses, it does project over top of the curb a little bit. So, but it is high enough for buses and for emergency apparatus to access in front of that drop off area. What's not shown here that will be there that I do want to point out would be bollards in between the canopy posts. So if you can see, we have some 3 or 4 foot high concrete posts for those steel columns to sit upon. We will have bollards in between those for safety. So I just wanted to point that out on the image. So again, that outer canopy is the taller piece. The canopies behind it, it's actually a 4 roof structure. Those are a little bit lower, mostly because we want to keep them as low as possible so that children and visitors are under cover as much as possible. But again, that outer loop will be the taller portion. But the structure itself, again, concrete base, a steel structure, very durable, so we want to try and select something that looked, pretty thin and elegant, and didn't hide too much of the school, but also provided durability and rigidity for the structure itself. I do want to point out that we are planning to replace the stair and railings. You can see that kind of tucked back into the image there, and also a new railing down the ramp itself. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So there are two plan options there, and I think we have some budget numbers for both. The last two images, basically the difference is the length of the canopy. So the roofs behind are all this, it's the same concept. It's just literally how long do we make the canopy and the drop off of the structure itself. That's the two difference, and I think it's option in 1 and 2. So
For those two diagrams that you see, the first one looks like the one I have in front of me. If you look at the second one, you'll see that the end bays on each are reduced. And what that does for us is it gives us two different options to get a canopy. And those two different options, as you'll see in a moment, sit right around what we're budgeting for having work.
Yeah.
Now, the one thing that I'll also show you is you see the different colors here. Those are the different roof levels. And if you go back, go forward into the pages, you start to see this diagram and the one prior to it, you start to see those different roof levels that are behind the canopy that aren't as obvious in the first part. And they're overlapping so you're not getting water down in between. So I'll take a moment and we'll talk about our estimates of the cost of this. Does everybody understand what you're seeing there with different levels and the two options, one with a longer canopy and one with section off each end? Okay. So looking at the budget and estimate sheet that's at the very back sheet, see down the left side in green is our budget. And you take design fees, the canopy construction, design contingency, and the construction contingency, those items will $500,000. That's what equals our canopy budget. Okay. The 84,800 is related to sidewalks and the steps and the other things that we were talking about related to the site. So we're staying true to those numbers that have been in our list all that time, trying to find a way to get under as much as we can, but without cheating what we really want out of our canopy. Option 1 is the larger canopy that has the sections on each end at the longest points. I know that the design fees are set in option 1 and 2. You'll see that across the top, so there's no variance. Our estimates on the canopy, option 1, we have an estimate that's slightly above our $420,000. That's an estimate. We will know what we need to know on bid day. Option 2, of course, is under our budgeted number for the canopy. You can see one is over by about 11,000. The other one is under by 30,718. The site work that goes along with that is slightly different in option 1 and option 2. We are under the budget for site work by about $4,000 in option 1, and under budget by a little bit more because we're not disrupting as much with the width of the canopy, $7,500 option 2. Keeping consistent design contingency and construction contingency, because remember, this is a publicly bid project. So while we haven't been talking about change orders, the Giza process, we'll be back to the way that we did the fields, and everything at the high school was not related to the Giza project there. And we could have some changes. It should be minimal because this is all new, but we could run into some unforeseen condition, et cetera. So we have a budget for that. When you get to the bottom line, you can see that our estimates of option 1 are within $7,000 or so of our goal of our budget for the canopy. So we've tried to design a canopy that's as big as we can make it, be right around that budget, take an option that's going to get us under the budget. And this design and this approach is what we would like to take and put out for bid publicly in about a month or so, so that we're out to bid in September, asking contractors to price that to start work as soon as the kids leave summer of 2024. What that will allow us to do is procure all the steel and everything that we need, that we're ready to go. The kids leave, boom, the canopy's going up, and it's finished really quickly compared to when the kids come back. So that's our plan. And if through this discussion tonight, there are no objections to it, we'll work with Derek and Jeff, and we'll have an advertisement about a month, and in the fall, you'll have numbers in front of you to potentially award this canopy. That makes sense to everybody, how that's laid out. Does anybody have any questions or any ideas or thoughts on what you'd like to see differently? The one thing we didn't note, we will be working with the administration to figure out how we letter the canopy. You don't have that Bogger Elementary School or JF Bogger Elementary School shown there. You have to remember that that canopy roof edge is probably going to be about this high. Is it about 4 or 6 inches, something like that? Maybe. So if it's not this high, we have to decide whether we want letters sticking up above, or we want letters that you can see clearly that fit within that edge. And I'll indicate that to you just so you know what I'm talking about. This roof edge that's right here, we have to figure out how we want that to look, and that's may end up bidding 2 options for that. We can bid an option to have it within the edge of the roof. We can bid an option to have it sticking up above. That way you can make a decision, but it's something that we didn't mention earlier.
Well, looking at the diagrams here and the projections for bids, I would like a price option for, I'll call it 1.5. And I would be removing a section to the north, and I think that would park us right on our estimate.
Oh, you mean just removing one of the 2 sections?
One of these sections, I'd call it to the north.
Okay.
And that would allow you some extra coverage at the ramp area.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like it covers the ramp.
So I think that's a good question for the perspective of
Right.
everybody here that doesn't have this. Like, if we're looking at Bacher, most people in this audience know what the school looks like. What are we talking about when it comes to end-to-end long one, end-to-end on the other option, just so we're clear?
About this piece right here.
This is what it's kind of right. So if you add on, so
Each section.
Extends to here.
This chunk right here. If you'd leave this one, so that way the ramp is fully covered and ingress and egress, but this point out here,
Here's the
getting to where we're
stairs.
beyond the zone.
So maybe a more practical approach, and this is a 2-part question.
So that one
So end to end, how many buses do the 2 options give us?
extends beyond the canopy.
Just 2, right? About 2. Yeah, I would say safely 2.
What's that?
Safely 2.
2 buses?
it's the length of 2 buses.
I think the 2 buses. I assume that's how many we have picking up at a given time.
They don't for drop off.
Is the
buses don't park up.
parking lot or recess area. This is mainly for the 250 to 300 kids that we have that are car riders, walkers,
Okay.
as they're waiting for that. Talk about the traffic pattern of people coming in there. The kids are waiting outside, then drop off as well. When they're dropped off, there's no coverage there. So it really isn't to accommodate bus drop off. The bus drop off is there in the skate park, playground, park.
So from your point of view, does the extra length really give us anything?
Didn't even think of it this way. It wasn't proposed, but Mr. Moser said about extending that at the bottom of the ramp for wheelchairs, crutches. There is a sidewalk will also be ADA compliant, but extending that part is where more of the action occurs as opposed to where you listed as the north end. To take that north end out and put the south end and have the south end. Get a budget, I think that's the next one.
Hopefully you can see this. What I think I heard you say was,
Yep.
if we do something in the middle, we don't do this,
Right,
but we keep this.
yes,
Because right now we have either this or taking those 2 out.
right.
So what we're gonna do is, I think we'll provide 2 alternates, because there's not, other than a sign alternate, there's not much to this. We'll have a base bid of the whole thing. first alternate will be to take this piece, which I think you did calculations that should put us right about where we wanted to be.
Yep.
The second alternate will be to take both pieces in case we need to exercise it. And then the other alternate will just be about signage. Is it stick up or is it on the face? Does everybody understand what we just kind of expressed there and how we're switching around what we came at for our first thoughts? Gets us kind of in the middle, but really addresses the need. I think that's great. That's exactly what we wanted to do here tonight.
I mean, is the lettering you talked about included in the budget anywhere, or is that extra?
The lettering is in the, we anticipated that there's lettering. in the budget.
I just looking at these drawings and I know they're renderings, so it's not really accurate, but it seems very dark. Seems like there's a lot of roof and a lot of darkness. Are we looking at putting any type of lights underneath?
With the lights that we're getting from the parking lot and everywhere else, I don't think, given the height of it, the width of it, it will be that problematic. Right now, we don't have electric and lighting.
Do we not have lighting along the sidewalk though?
There is.
Currently-
There is some, like you can see one later. I know there's one over here and I think there's one further down. So there are some along the sidewalk.
And my concern is a roof will block out any of that light. I mean, I'm just thinking of exiting that building at a nighttime event where it's dark out. That seems a very dark, ominous feeling. That's just my impression looking at it. Especially with a lowered roof closer to the door. I don't know.
We talked about that at one of the meetings.
What we'll do is we'll look at different options. I think probably one option is if you run conduit out of the building and run it along and put lights in there with conduit mounted underneath. There's a cost to it. It's not in the budget as it is. When we start to think about the option 1A that we just reviewed, if we start to do that and add lighting to it, instead of being $30,000 under, now we're real close, because that lighting won't necessarily be a real expensive
understand
thing,
that.
but
Any of these
we can look into that.
That's a good question.
Could any of those panels be clear?
sorry.
Instead of being dark, some of those panels,
Oh, yeah, I was thinking that way.
so solar or something?
So
Yes.
you mean clear as in it will be more costly to make a
That's headache.
clear panel on the top than to have it just with roofing. However, what we'll do is we'll look and see. Well, I want to get a panel that is going to be translucent, but not transparent, because a transparent panel, like you take a plastic panel, put it on a roof, let it be in the sun.
Yeah.
It's going to ultimately kind of change into a condition none of us are going to be proud of.
Yeah.
If you take something that's that's letting light through, but has some sort of opaqueness to it, that won't change as much over time. We'll look at that to see if there's a way that we can combine letting light through and have that equal the cost of what a normal roof deck would look like.
Is the other option that we could also add as an alternate, just adding like lighting to that? Could
Yeah,
that,
we
be-
could
as we bid
could
it, if
add
we
the
wanted to
lighting
bid that
itself
out?
as an alternate. What I was thinking of a little bit was making sure that the underneath side of roof deck was white. And the reason I was thinking about that was if the light is shining down here, it's going to reflect a little bit more, and it will help with how light it is underneath there. It's like the difference between a white ceiling and a black ceiling. So we will examine lighting, the roof itself, to see if we can change that at all. And then we will examine what happens if we paint the bottom white. I have lighting programs that would help with that.
My experience is transparent panels are more expensive and then a maintenance headache.
Yeah, that was our
I think
concern.
lighting would be,
Lighting is,
And
we have to go that route. Some simple lights would be a,
my concern is not along the road, the actual drop off area. It's back up in like where the
Right.
steps and the landing are.
That is.
The other option we could look at is whether it's in conjunction with some overhead lighting, but maybe there's some wall lighting that might be a little easier to install.
Maybe even a sconce on either side of the door would help.
We have to look and see where those wall packs are when you come out. They're lighting it up underneath. might not be so bad. So I think, we'll end up talking to our folks and Mr. Hoffman, probably Mr. Slater, a little bit about what are you seeing at night?
That's right.
What's the,
They don't have measurements.
I don't think if they're transparent about, hey. At night.
Doesn't help at night.
Yeah,
That's what, even if the panels are, at 5 o'clock in the winter time, it's dark.
It's dark.
So if we have them going on at the building, they're coming on,
Great.
2 great points, I'm glad that we do this, because it brings up things that we don't all think of, so it's definitely a good point to make. But there are wall lights, that might be below. Lights in front of the building, right over the door and down by the ramp, that might, I don't know, of the canopy, they might be under it projecting light out, so.
it may just help us to have those wall packs on each side and not have to come all the way out into the. So we'll look at what the best options for those are to provide lighting, but keep the cost down. And then we will modify, and I think we'll do a quick look just to honor the idea. We'll see if there's something out there. I tend to believe that we'll be coming back here saying providing some lighting itself is better than trying to change what that roof deck is.
Right.
Costs and long-term maintenance and the way it's gonna look.
But we're spending a lot of money to make the inside very bright and welcoming and
Right.
fresh. Based on the darkness of the brick color of the building, I don't want to see the outside not look as inviting as it can. What was I gonna say?
That's good. That's exactly what we want to do here.
So I have a question. This might actually be for Ms. Gerton more than anything. Does this obscure any of our current security cameras? And is this a good candidate to put some few more underneath?
Yeah, that's a great question. The cameras aren't in yet for exterior, so we would be able to make adjustments. This is my first eyeballs on the structure. Appreciate you acknowledging the need for bollards.
And if we need some extra conduit to get some wires to cameras out there.
Yeah, that's not a problem. Like if you end up wanting to put cameras on each end or one in the middle, or whatever that is, we can coordinate that through Mr. Hoffman and we'll get it with the sign.
I remember what it was the stairs. If nothing else, you need light on the stairs, correct? At night?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And you have some of that now. I just want to see how that's working. And as I stand there where the canopy is, am I getting light on me?
Yeah.
It's not coming down this way.
So I see there are 6 downspouts. Where exactly is all of that going to drain to?
I believe we are tying, I think, all of the downspouts together as much as possible to that southern end out into that grass area. It's a little tough to see, but there's a dashed line on the back side of the canopy that shows the routing of the downspout. Actually tucks under the large canopy at one spot. So I think there's one on the upper side of the upper canopy on the side towards the school. And then there's 3 smaller ones that then connect into, but I think we're daylighting it all towards that south end in the grass area.
I also have a quick question. When we get a lot of ice on top, where's that gonna fall? If that's sloped a little bit, is it gonna come back? Cause you don't want like that falling down on somebody.
So it slopes. You can kind of see it. It's tough to see it where those little slope arrows. So it slopes towards the back. But there is a gutter along that backside to catch that. And then it varies where it slopes on the green canopy, sort of slopes down and to the left. The orange actually slopes back onto the existing roof. And the purple one slopes actually north in plan and catches that gutter that I was mentioning that comes down and daylights to the south end then.
There are balls right here.
But we will work with the administration on the change in alternates so that we have one of those sections leaving, that section be on the north, leaving the one by the bottom of the ramp, lighting options. And we'll double check all of the stormwater And once we get through all that, we'll have alternates for anything that makes sense. Coordinate with Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Pink to get advertisement out. We'll share with you where we're headed, so that, you know, nothing's surprising to you. We're out for bid. We get our bids in the fall. Since we know when we're out for bid, we'll have a good idea. I want to give contractors enough time. This is not going to take long to price, but I want to make sure I have a few contractors that are pricing it on the job. So if I have to modify due date for the bid because there's other things to do or whatever, I'm going to modify it to make sure I get a few bids in for competitiveness. And we'll be in front of you in the fall to talk about what those numbers are. Any other questions, thoughts? Thank you for spending all that time with us. Really pleased with the way Bogger's been going, and I'm glad to be in front of you here in August saying we're in good shape and seeing a happy principal and not having any issues as we end the summer. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Damien.
Thank you.
Before the board moves on from this conversation, so we're going to meet next week. So the board meeting is here. Thought about having it back here. The issue is they're still cleaning and getting everything out of the main areas. Is it the board's preference to meet prior to the board meeting over there, or would you rather have the board meeting here and then go over after? Before?
Work schedules would probably
I
be.
just want to make sure it's
Okay.
most conducive to. So we'll plan. I'll be there by, 4:45. That would give us a good 45 minutes. I want to leave there by 5:30, 5:40 to be here. So we'll plan 4:45 at Bacher next Tuesday. Okay, thank you.
Hey, maybe before you head out, I have another question, and this is off topic. All of the energy savings we've done with you and Giza projects over the last couple of years, are you tracking, or somebody tracking the energy savings that we've seen or we are experiencing based on those projects?
Yeah, Derek when he pays the bills.
Oh, sorry.
There's a meeting scheduled.
I mean, yeah, no, you can go ahead. We're actually meeting tomorrow
Yeah.
to discuss it. Yeah, the timing of your question is perfect.
Energy savings meeting.
Yeah, we're gonna have a meeting. I think Wayne is gonna be coming out, yeah. To review where we stand with some of those energy projects. Heidi has been, our accounts payable and my secretary has been providing Site Logic with our bills over the past year. They review that. Now we're gonna review that information tomorrow.
I would love to see a report of.
Yeah, we will end up doing a report that will flow through Mr. Hoff and Mr. Fink.
Yeah, I can see
Called
that.
M&V, measurement and verification. So it really, and it will happen. What you're gonna start to see things on or more like the high school is of the work that we did there. After we get to a place where we've finished with Fogger, you'll see those energy savings as well. But what we do with M&V is we do that quarterly. And this is the kickoff meeting. So effectively, the district will be shown, this is what it is, this is how you read it, this is what it means. And then we'll continue to coordinate every quarter, looking at how the district's using the building, what's happening, and that is continuing. And the energy savings, while it's ultimately expressed in dollars, the savings itself calculated in either the units of electricity, whether it's demand or it's the actual kilowatt hours. Same thing with the units of gas, et cetera. But you will start to see that. It was and interesting you asked that because the meeting is scheduled for this week.
Yeah. Chris, you mentioned a little bit ago, I don't know if you noticed it, solar.
Mhm.
I recently read that Site Logic provides solar project management. A couple months ago, maybe a year ago or so, we had a brief conversation about solar. I think I'd like to see us return to that conversation and look at some other options. So just planting the seed with you, maybe get some more information to us about what you guys offer in terms of solar project management.
I can do that. And the other thing that I want to be able to do is look at the Inflation Reduction Act and how it's being used by school districts and certain types of school districts to buy down solar. There are places where that makes a lot of sense. There are places where it makes less sense. And I think we can have those conversations and look at the district to see what it really means, depending on where you would put that. That includes, are you putting it on a roof? For example, I wouldn't necessarily put it on Bogger's roof because Bogger's roof is in warranty, but has a limited warranty. There are other places you could put it. Some folks like to put it out on the ground somewhere, et cetera. You have to look at what the solar itself costs something, but where you put it also changes the cost of that. I think what we could do, and we'll talk to the administration about it, is put some ideas around that so we can kind of tell you, here, we could look at this. This probably isn't going to make sense. If you want to have that discussion, I want to make it kind of easy for you to have it without having to go through big studies or anything like that, just to be able to say, I know enough that I want to talk about it, or I know enough that I don't need to talk. We'll do that for you.
Thank you.
Fair enough.
Okay, onto the agenda items listed. Other facilities, there's one donation. I think that good program. I think we approved that last year as well.
Okay, everything. Finance Committee, Mr. Frederick and Mr. Moser.
I believe Mr. Fink is going to speak to us a little bit about the potential impact of the state budget impasse.
Yes, 1 second. I'm just bringing that up. So just speaking in general terms, and I know this is something that everyone's probably been considering, like what will be the impact if this budget doesn't get passed? Basically, how is it going to affect us? And most importantly, our ability to meet payroll and pay our other liabilities that we have. So what I did was I looked at what our current fund balance is to start the year, which fortunately we have a strong fund balance. Looked at our local tax revenues. So we get the bulk of our tax revenues collected in the first few months of the new school year. So we're fortunate in that case as well. And then just compare that to the federal revenues that we'll still be seeing. And then, just put that out forward. Like if we get no state money at all, how long until we run out of money and things start to get a little dicey for us and we have to start making some plans. So basically we have 9 months. If we got no state funding at all, we could run the district as we are now comfortably for 9 months. Now, I wouldn't feel comfortable once we hit January. At that point, I would start to look at options for how we can prepare ourselves for a longer impasse. So I already reached out and talked to our local depository that holds the majority of our funds locally. They stated, yep, Derek, we would have you covered. We could do a credit line for you to ensure that you hit payroll. We would only need 30 days to get that in place. That would be kind of like our safety net if we do run into a spot where we're not getting state funds clear into March, April. Don't want to do that because we have to pay interest on that, but that's what most school districts have to do, take out a loan of some kind. The reason why I would look at a credit line would be because if we don't use it, we don't pay any interest on it. So it's just there as a backup. To give you some idea, we do still get some state money. So for our local taxpayers, we will still receive the homestead farmstead property tax reimbursement money. So that'll come in 2 payments over, I think it's August and October, because that money is already set aside. That's not part of the state budget, even though it comes from the state. But the items that we will be missing out on is our basic ed funding, which is over $10 million for us, close to 11. Our special ed funding, which is almost $2 million. Social Security subsidy, which is $650,000. Transportation subsidy won't get paid. Retirement subsidy won't get paid. That's over $3.25 million. Federal subgrants, like the title programs, they won't get paid out until the budget is passed. And our career and technical subsidy doesn't get paid either. So it really is a big impact. Like when you start to add it all up, we're talking about 17 to 18 million dollars of our annual budget that just will not come to us. But again, thankfully, we have strong reserves. We're a district that is a pretty even split between our local funding and our state funding. Those districts that rely more heavily on the state funding are in a much tougher position than we are. But we'll be buoyed by that local money coming in over the next few months. So I'm hopeful that it gets resolved well before any of that. But in the meantime, I'd say we're we should be good. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. Any additional questions from the board just on where things stand? We're waiting for them to come back together. I mean, it's passed. It's just a matter of having them present it to the governor for a signature, but I don't think it's that simple with politics. So we'll keep an eye on it though, and I can keep the board updated if there's any major changes. So
Next
and just
opportunity to pass September.
yes,
when they
yes.
get back
September they're reconvening. Governor's been calling for them to reconvene sooner. I don't think there's any movement on that. So my hope is September they come back, they move it along, get signed, and then any pay and just so everyone's aware, any payments that we didn't receive gets processed immediately. Well, I shouldn't say immediately, as fast as the state can move when they're moving fast, which means we'll see some money, but it might be a couple months before we actually get caught up on it. But we'll be in a good spot if it does get passed in September.
Yeah, I saw an article today that referenced the next 30 to 45 days is realistic.
Yeah, I think it is realistic for sure.
It
Sure.
seems to be
It seems a little different than previous budget impasses and the fact that they've already agreed to the budget. So
Well, I congratulate you on 9 months because I was reading where some districts, even in our own county, could not get beyond September.
and I mean,
yes.
we've talked about fund balances in the past and how important it is as a district to be able to, have a budgetary reserve and hopefully carry some of those money over. This is a case where, it makes my job a lot easier. I can relax. I'm not up late at night worrying about this. So yeah, that's why we do that 5, 7, 10-year projection to try and keep those balances above zero.
That's good news.
Perfect.
Mr. Pink? The proposed agenda items are just the normal financial reports and bills to be paid. Nothing further under finance.
Yeah. Personnel Committee, excuse me, Mr. Frederick and Dr. Weaver.
We have a few actionable items this evening that we'll take. Like to actually recommend for approval in the form of a motion for items 8A through 8E.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Could we have roll call, please?
Mr. Frederick,
Yes.
Mr. Hosterman,
Yes.
Mr. Hunt,
Yes.
Mr. Moser,
Yes.
Dr. Strasser,
Yes.
Mr. Harris,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Mrs. Rance.
Yes.
To recognize that we have at least one of those people in the audience this evening. Ms. Rose, welcome. Is there anybody else that we? No. All right. And then we just have the proposed agenda items for next week. Are there any questions on those? That's items 11A through 11N.
Should be in order.
Hearing none, that's all under personnel this evening.
All right, thank you. Okay, Athletics and Extracurricular Committee, Mr. Hosterman and Mr. Moser.
We skipped legislative policy.
We did, I had a circle. That means we did it, sorry. You can go back to legislative policy, Mr. Hosterman. And Dr. Strasser.
Just the items that are listed, the policies to be reviewed. First reading on all of them. Anything else?
Now athletics and extracurricular. Hosterman and Mr. Moser.
I think just the policy or the agenda items. Sit under section 9. Questions?
You have a question from a community member. He couldn't make it tonight. He had to work. What's the status on junior high softball?
I believe we will have enough athletes for a team this year.
Okay, that question was from Keith Houts and he was gonna show up, but he had 2 emergency tows he had to go take. So he wanted me to ask.
Yep.
You have enough for a team?
I believe so.
Okay,
At this point in time, I believe we will have enough.
okay, I'll let him know that. Thank you.
I do know they were actively recruiting.
Yes. He called me today and said he wanted to come, but he couldn't make it, so.
Personal.
Any other questions? That's it.
Okay, Education and Technology Committee, Mr. Hosterman.
Yeah, nothing other than the agenda items for next week under section 10. No questions heard.
I'll keep it.
Right. Is there anything from any board member? Other than what we discussed? We're gonna go into an executive, so. All right, motion to go into executive session. So personnel.
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor signify aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for being here this evening. We will have no further business when we return. Thanks again.